Good morning, everyone. I'm Sierra, and I hope everyone is driving safely or has gotten to work safely if you're working from home. Enjoy. I hope it is a good, peaceful day for everybody. So, I want to just come quickly, I won't be here long, and talk a little bit about exposure pains. So, exposure pains is just like a nickname that I gave to kind of checking when I'm upset and seeing whether I'm upset because what was said to me was actually hurtful, or if I'm upset because what was said to me exposed something that I was not trying to have anybody notice, or something that I was overcompensating for to cover up because I didn't want anybody to notice. So it's important that I think that we know the difference between when someone says something that's upsetting and when it's an exposure pain and when someone's actually correcting us. And I think that that difference is important because the difference between the two will allow for you to actually be taking correction. Because when somebody says something to you and they're being hurtful and nasty, if you're registering what someone is saying to you as hurtful and nasty, then hopefully you're like throwing it out and you like letting it get out your head and forget it. I don't know what they talking about. They just want to be nasty. I'm not even going to listen. But what I noticed that I was doing before I started to pause and say, okay, is this an exposure pain, or was what they said really just them being nasty or trying to be hurtful, was I was throwing away corrections. Like I was throwing away things that I actually needed to change and correct within myself, things that God was calling out in me. And it was because I couldn't see past my exposure pain. I couldn't see past my little, oh, you saw that? Or, oh, you see that in me? You noticed that thing in me that I've been trying to cover up? And so, that's why I think that it's so important that we talk about it today, because I know that we are all bought into being better people, bought into being better mentors, and pouring it. We pour into people just as much as we get poured into, and I want to be great at pouring into people, but the way I think what that is hinged on is how great I am at getting poured into. And I don't believe you can be great at getting poured into if you can't take correction. So if somebody's like pouring into my life, but as soon as they hit a nerve or as soon as they hit a sore spot for me, if I'm gonna throw away everything they said and chalk it up to, oh no, they were just being nasty, forget it, then I'm gonna keep on missing moments where God was really trying to use that person to get something out of me that he wants out of me, right? So Proverbs 12:1 NIV version says, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but whoever hates correction is stupid. And so I think that we can hate correction as an oversight, and that'll cause us to be stupid. It'll cause us to miss that moment where we could have learned something new about ourselves and about who God says that we are. So I think that the best way for us to get to that moment where we can be able to be poured into easier, I want it to be easy for people to be able to pour into me. And sure, of course, discernment is always a thing. Always use discernment. Because some people are, just saying things to be hurtful. But for the most part, we're trusting that the people that we have trusted and entrusted in our lives to pour into us are going to do it. And I want to make sure that they can do it with ease. And I think that happens when our heart posture changes. And you change that heart posture by taking the correction. And I think that also just another side thing is to be okay with taking correction even when delivery is wrong. Like, I think sometimes people can say it wrong, but what they were saying you still needed to hear, and they just didn't say it the right way. And everybody got something, right? We all imperfect. So sometimes they miss how they were supposed to say it, but I still want to be able to take what they're saying, or I still want to be able to have enough discernment and have my eyes and heart open enough to be like, oh, okay, you know what? That's something I do need to work on. Or, oh, you're right. I was wrong for when I did that. I think one of the biggest kind of humps to get over when it comes to taking correction is that a lot of times we tie our identity to the thing that we've done wrong, or we tie our identity to whatever it is that's being corrected, because sometimes it's just a thing that you did wrong in the moment and you just kind of like need to be corrected for. But then I think other times it's a pattern, and that pattern has happened for a reason. Like the way that you've reacted to this thing, you've been reacting this way for a long time, and a lot of times that's out of it's a defense mechanism, right? So it's out of insecurity, or it's out of fear. And the hump of taking correction for the things that I use as my defense and I use as my protection, the kind of forts that I build around my insecurities is so big that it's almost hard to tackle it sometimes. But I think the most important thing to do is get comfortable with discomfort, and get used to this making me feel like, oh, like, dang, I notice more and more every day that, yeah, I got some stuff with me. Because if I can say that, first off, then I have less of a facade to keep up. If I'm saying more and able to be more like open and transparent about, okay, I got some stuff with me, I don't have the facade of having to keep up with, oh, I don't do anything wrong. So now it's a whole lot easier for me to take the correction and be uncomfortable when you're telling me something's wrong, because yeah, you already know, like, it's gonna be some stuff wrong with me. But how that happens is you have to untie your identity from it. So I can't say that this is who I am and be okay with you telling me there's something wrong with it. So just a little example would be like, if I was the type of person who loved shoes, and somebody stepped on my shoe and I spazzed, because everybody around me was people that I've like kept up this image of how much I love shoes. So I'm spazzing, and now it's, oh, well, if you know me, you know I ain't gonna let nobody step on my shoes. I ain't gonna let nobody mess with my shoes. So now I'm kind of enslaved. I'm kind of tied to this whole thing of every time somebody makes the mistake of stepping on my shoes or anything happens to my shoes, now I gotta spaz. Now I gotta act a fool. Even though this whole time I'm trying to be somebody who is pouring into people, but I done tied my identity so tight, wrapped around this little thing that don't mean nothing, that I'm missing the opportunity to extend grace when I can be extended somewhere where I could be extending grace, right? I'm missing the opportunity to show God somewhere because I want to maintain me. And the entire time, it's a lie that even is you. Like, the only thing that we should be tying our identity to is who God says that we are. And he don't say nothing about being a sneakerhead. Like, none of these things really matter, but we've picked up ways to kind of make them matter. I think that something even more justified a lot of times is a person who like spazzes because they don't want nobody taking advantage of them. Like, they don't, like, you don't want nobody, you know, stealing from you. And of course, don't nobody want nobody stealing. But I think that saying that I'm gonna do this thing if you do this thing, and tying myself to something that is so far from who God has ever been, I'm enslaving myself to something that is bound to get called out. And I'm putting myself in a cycle of, now I'm not going to be open to being called out about this thing. Now I'm not going to be open to giving or extending any grace for anybody who does this thing, because I've created or tied my identity to my reactions. And I'm not my reactions. I'm not my mistakes. Those are things that I do, but they aren't who I am. And so anybody should be able to come to me and tell me that a reaction was wrong, and I not associate my identity to that. I should be able to be objective in that situation and be able to step back and say, oh, okay, that was wrong, because it's not actually me. So it doesn't have to have that effect on me emotionally that it does when you tie your identity to it, because now the corrections that are being made to a thing that you've done and not to who you are. So I think that it's super important to be open to discomfort, because I think, again, just to bring it back, that it creates an easier pour for the person who's pouring into you. And the easier that pour is, the more you can get. And the more you can get, the greater you can be at pouring into other people. And if the real goal here is to be instrumental and is to be valuable, then the only thing that you can do is continue sharpening who you are as a person. And you can do that best when you are open to hearing the corrections of the people that we love, trust, respect, or somebody that we don't know at all. So really, that basically is all that I have for you guys. I definitely, short and sweet, wasn't going to keep you long. So I'm going to pray us out, and I'm hoping you guys have a great rest of your week. So dear God, thank you so much for this opportunity, just to come together again in fellowship with you, God, and to come together again to be mindful of how we can be more like you, how we can please you, and how we can show you in our daily lives. It is so important that we be an example of who you are, that we are going to try it every single day. So God, I ask that you continue to extend the grace to us that you always do. And I ask that we extend grace today as freely as you've shown us how. Lord, please lead and guide us. Keep us safe. In your Son, Jesus' name, amen.